bring in our next guest. She is an actor, performance artist who will be starring in the upcoming film Dreams of My Father. Let us welcome Jillian Omatoso.
Hi there.
Hey, Jillian, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, thank you for being here. This is, yeah, I mean, we've talked about having you on for a little while now, so I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. Would it be okay if I perform a song to start, actually?
Yeah, if whatever makes you comfortable, sure. Yeah, and then we'll just, we'll end the show after the interview then.
Uh, yeah, because we have time. We don't have much time.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's fine. I mean, if we go a little past 8 o'clock, I'm not going. It's okay. But yeah, whatever you're more comfortable with. If you want to start with a song, I'll
Yeah, thank you.
sure go for it. All right. What was that called?
That was called Burden of Proof. I probably should have introduced
Well,
it
that's
as that.
okay. That's why we're here. We're here to talk about it. So, um,
Yeah.
now I went on. I guess you have like an acting profile out there,
Yes.
and I wanted to read a quote to you. Where you said, "I want to write songs that appeal to people in a way that's challenging and emotionally diverse, musically complex, but in a way that is fluid and expressive." How do you feel you're fulfilling that?
I probably wrote that a long time ago, and
2017, about a half a year before we met.
wow, you knew that I wrote it a long time ago.
Mhm.
Um,
But
oh, I
sometimes I the reason I kind of went back that far is because that felt like a real manifesto,
it was.
like a real mission statement.
It was.
And now that you're, almost 4 years out from that, how do you feel how do you feel it's going? Like, how do you feel about where you're at? Because I've seen you perform, poetry and piano and guitar and kind of spoken word, and your album kind of has this sort of like kind of this electronic feel to it.
Let's not call it an album. Or are you talking about what I sent to you this morning?
No, no, the record that's on the collection that's on Spotify.
Oh my God. Um, yeah. So I um I I'm very self-conscious about my work. That's no excuse. I think what I want to say is that it's part of why I decided to play the song before I did the interview, because I wanted to not have that sort of thing loom over me while I'm doing the interview. I wanted to just be like, this is where I'm at, and I'll share that with you because I intended to perform it. So why would I not? Now I think that with my music, I think I get a bit into it sometimes in such a way that it can be at the expense of other people enjoying it. And That's been something I've had to work on a bit as far as like, I mean, I'm aware of when I'm belting and stuff, but like um, I think I try to play more in my Ken these days, but it's still hard for me sometimes to do that. And I
Do you find yourself like almost being, um, kind of so in the like almost overcome
Oh yeah,
by the moment in which you're performing?
for sure, for sure, um, for sure. Um,
That's really interesting because, because I was going to say, like, I kind of find your music almost like kind of almost unclassifiable because, I hear like you're using like kind of pop music chords and things like that. Because to me, it sounds like it's informed by poetry, by theatricality, by like the avant garde, and it's really, really true to itself. And I don't know if that's like my question was basically like, how did you arrive at making music like that, as a person that like you've kind of listed, you say like Queen or David Bowie or the Smiths, who are these very boundary pushing artists. How did you arrive at what you're doing now?
well,
Or was it even purposeful?
one thing I realized years ago was I don't think many people set out to hold back on their innovation, um, or their ingenuity, or their novelty, so to speak. Novelty being newness, as
Yeah.
any sort of thing to bring to the table.
Mhm.
You don't just hold back because you're like, oh, it's 2015. People aren't going to listen to that until 2025. They won't get you. So you allow it to, if it's something visceral and genuine and comes from this. So that was my perspective, at least at the time. If it's going to be ahead of its time in that way, you don't just hold back and say like, oh, I can't do that. It's not gonna be it's too much. It's too far. It's too forward. That's almost arrogant to say. So I thought like, just let it be as it is. But damn, I like this question. I like these questions, Brian.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Because, when I think about your music, because I wanted to say too, like when I hear your
I've been
voice,
deliberately reclusive too, by the way. I'm just
what's
saying.
that?
I've been deliberately reclusive in
Well,
ways
that,
that I would not have wanted to, but haven't been kind of like a double-ended intention.
okay.
Yes. But go on.
I was going to say, when I was listening to things today, and I mean, just as we've known each other for about 3.5 years now. And I remember right after we met, you actually sent me a message with some of your songs, and you're like, "So, what do you think of this?" Um, and I don't know what I've thought about over the years, just as I've kind of watched you progress, like in our, just in our little music community, is originally I was kind of thinking that you sing in the way that like Ornette Coleman plays his instrument, like in this kind of where it sort of leads you one way and then there's like a big jump to something surprising or unexpected, and then you kind of come back down and then you go somewhere else with it. And I don't know, I was always really fascinated by that. But I guess my question to you is, how do you reconcile making something that's a little further out, in like almost a little more artful, in a medium that, let's be honest, kind of rewards sing along choruses?
I don't know. David Bowie was a genius at it, wasn't he? Um, you all the artists that I cited that you read from my citation of them are geniuses at that. I I'm still learning how to do that. I mean, to me, a chorus like you know, carry your load. Feel like pushing the brakes as your mind starts to ache. Mary, that's simple.
Yeah.
But like the way I deliver it, it becomes this intense manifesto imposed on the world, and that's, I guess, in a way antithetical to a simple, nonchalant pop chorus.
Well, I like that. I like that. I like artists that challenge people. And I think of somebody who, one particular artist that comes to mind that gets that even today, which I think the derision is all wrong, because I love her music. Um, I think somebody who challenged her audience within a sort of pop medium was Yoko Ono.
I knew you were gonna say her, and
Well, no, because I think, but if you listen to those albums, if you listen to like Approximately Infinite Universe or Fly or something like that, um, this is a person that's, kind of working in this, she's got Eric Clapton on those albums. She's got, obviously, her husband, John Lennon. She's got Ringo Starr. She's got all these great session players on there. She's got these pop musicians on these records. But she's and her records, she's a major label recording artist, and she's putting this stuff out, and she's kind of challenging people. She's pushing boundaries to people who are kind of expecting those sing-along choruses. And I mean, a lot of those albums have aged really, really well. And to me, the reason I bring it up is because it makes sense to what you said before, where you're saying, yeah, well, I can't think about whatever year it is, 2020, 2015, 2010, whatever, saying, oh, well, maybe if I wait this long, or, hope people, or I try to kind of make something that's a little more of its time. I find it inspiring to just say, you know what, I'm going to make my art. I'm going to say what I have to say. And whether people get it now, or they get it 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, like that's on them. That's not on me. It's not my responsibility as an artist to make you understand. It's my responsibility to put something out honest, to put something out with honesty and with purpose.
that's a very valuable perspective to have. And I
And that's how I view what you're doing. Like that's not a general, just, I mean, it's a general philosophy, but that's how I look at the people in our scene. That's how I look at what you're doing. And I admire that.
thank you, Brian.
Um, can we talk about acting?
Yes, yes.
Because you're in a film,
I am in
which
a
is
film.
which is great. You're in a film called Dreams of My Father,
Yeah.
and I'd love to know how you got involved with that.
So backstage.com. It's a lovely site for actors and actresses and those looking for performance gigs. And I I decided to sign up for this audition for this film that was being done by a student, a graduate student in Baltimore, because I was looking for jobs,
Yeah.
and and this one was paid, and I was like, okay, I can actually fulfill this one. It's for a trans woman who is basically she basically has hallucinations of her father. Apparitions of her father appear as she looks at her reflection because her face is similar to his, and she was abused by her father, was mistreated by her father, was given a standoffish dynamic between her and her father, and it it plays out as she has to reconcile with that while she has a lover in the in her living room, and she's just going to the bathroom, and suddenly this apparition comes of her father, and she suddenly has to reconcile with that in a dream sequence.
How do you think the message of the film will resonate with people, with viewers?
I think I think I gave a good performance in it. I think it'll resonate well. I think that I think I guess I always worry as a trans woman myself that anything trans that I express will be perceived as niche. But then again, interestingly enough, with me, I've kind of been able to be embraced by a large sum of people who are not trans, and it's sort of become a happenstance thing rather than something that is the primacy of who I am as a person. So I don't know. But
Is that something is that something you prefer
I think
to
most
just?
trans people would prefer that.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I think most trans people would prefer that. So I think I'm perhaps lucky in that regard.
Okay. And I mean, I understand there's a degree of privilege for me to even ask that question,
Right.
but I
You're talking to
and
me.
what's that?
You're talking to me. You don't have to worry about that.
No,
But
no, I just want to make sure, like anybody that's watching, like I don't want to just say, oh, what do you think? I want to at least let people, like I do try to understand that, you know, a person's gender identity, their sexuality, anything like that, that's just one part of who they are.
yeah,
But sometimes
not everything.
I think it's easier for people who don't understand that to kind of immediately say, uh not, maybe not in a bad way, but just to kind of immediately identify a trans person, for example, as such, and then to kind of build their perception of that person with that as your sort of base, your sort of like base level, when there's so much more.
Yeah, I think that uh, I think it's a very humanized storyline and portrayal, and I think the passion in it and the pathos in it be be well received. So I wouldn't even in it being as its status as a queer film, it also has its capacity as a film beyond that as well.
Mhm.
So queer and non-queer audiences alike can certainly invest and enjoy this film. So
When does it have a release date? Like when could I see it? When could our viewers see it?
it's not going to be
And
released
and where and how?
until April. So yeah, I probably should have we could have had this interview perhaps in a few months, but it's going to be released in April, and
Well, we'll just have to have you. We just have to have you come back on. That's all.
yeah.
It's not. We're not one and done. We have repeat guests all the time.
When does your season begin? Your new season?
That I don't know. Usually, like, well, we're taking a break right now for the holidays. Next week is Thanksgiving week, of course. I don't know. I'll have to talk to Matt about it. We'll figure it out. Maybe February, maybe March. Also the world is crazy. So we'll see if it gets slightly more tolerable, after that. So, but I'm actually not sure when our season is, but yeah, whenever I'm sure we'll be back by April. So yeah, we'll just have to have you back on. That's all.
Yeah, me.
What is it about acting in general that really draws you in? And by the way, I think it's very cool that we've had two theater people on the show today.
Totally. Shout out to Martin, honestly.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Um, yeah, I think as a whole, I kind of live performatively as well as just naturally expressively. So, um,
Oh,
Jesse.
so don't forget Jess, who is also a theater person, our you know co-host Jesse. Actually, Chris too. Chris was a theater major too. It should be, since I'm the only non-theater person.
And you knew about my sister, so.
Well, I do Martin Houth before. I just like to. I don't know. I just find that stuff fascinating because we're all performers too. That there is a bit of acting that goes into even a musical performance. But I don't want to cut you off. You were saying like sometimes you live in a kind of performative fashion, and I want to hear you elaborate on that thought.
Yeah, I think that I just recognize the symphonic and symphonic nature of everything. Everything can be sort of has its sequence and music to it, and by that I mean it has its rhythm, it has its order and its disorder and its and so in that, now I do sound like Yoko Ono, but in that basically anything I do is done with an intention of conveying and an intention of um direct intention and a conveying intention as well. I think with all of us, whether consciously or subconsciously, there is um a sort of canvas on which we draw our own gestures and words and movements and imprints of our personalities. And I think that that is just the lens I see things through and experience life through, do things through. So that to me is acting. That's it's creating a piece that conveys something through gestures, and I think that's just very natural for me. And many people have
That's
said
excellent.
some people say it's more natural to me than music, in fact. So, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see it because I've never seen you kind of in an acting role. Like I only know you as kind of a stage, like not a stage like a theater performer, but a stage performer. A musician and a poet, and obviously a recording artist too.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how your performance in a film differs from that, and how you inhabit like a proper role and not just kind of your own role as a performer.
Agreed. Yeah, I can't wait for it either. Yeah, I felt really in my element that weekend, and I really am pleased with what I expect of the results. So
Good. As we start to kind of wrap things up, I want to, the last like question or two I have kind of goes back to, how you were talking about you know, uh, uh, being defined by that. Now, over the summer, you kind of made your presence known, um, like in the community as a voice to some of the protests that have been taking place.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of want to ask you a hard question. How do you feel if or when people ask you for guidance on some of the issues that are being faced today, and more put on your you want to take?
I think my own eloquence and own lens of experience allows for me to be of value as a voice. And yes, I do have nuances in my own perspectives, as people have said, and I do come from some mild skepticisms about certain things, indeed, which makes me an imperfect narrator for the movement.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of pretty good deep conversations about this.
Yes.
On that, like when we did that other interview over the summer
Yeah.
on Blow Up Radio. Yeah.
I can cite several things in that interview that I can think of that I said in that aren't necessarily bad, but could indeed strike someone to feel a bit angry at me about. But
Mhm.
I don't think that I think that I think I'm really glad I did that interview, and I think also that I'm really grateful for the movement. I also recognize that there is a capacity that the way that things turn out for us, for Black people, and for the country as a whole, and for trans people. I mean, I'm every intersection at this point, but you know, for everyone, it might not come through simply insisting that certain rights need to be acknowledged and adhered to, and certain pains ought to be acknowledged more than they have been. Now, that is probably a necessity that that movement occurs, also, as it has been, but also a lot of people simply want to experience life man to man, woman to woman, person to person, and to not be so fearful that they themselves are the enemy. Um, like, for instance, some might not react the same as you as far as like asking me a question deeply personal about my life as a trans person or trans woman, and think that that they have a right to ask that, and it's not just them speaking from privilege. Some might say it's from privilege, um, but the privilege on it it becomes a point of debate in as much as one's valuation of its relevance in the current year and the current state of affairs is variable.
Interesting.
But I do think that it's not the issue of white people; it's the issue of whiteness that is the that's what I've come to see that is the defining cause of conflict in the blackness afflicting part of Black people's lives. It it's not that white people are the problem. It's that there is this sort of hierarchical expectation of whiteness as the primary beauty and wealth and merit of heritage and default heritage in our society.
I like that. That's a perspective that people don't really talk about. I mean, obviously, like heritage is kind of one of those dog whistle words that certain groups of people tend to use, when when they kind of want to, when they when they want to say certain things, but not be immediately called out for it. Like heritage is kind of one of those. So that does tie into it to say that, because I think the United States, at its most ideal, is supposed to be this amalgamation. Like the United States is supposed to be this um, this thing that doesn't really. And I am not an America's the greatest place in the world person. I'm definitely a realist on that. Um, but one thing I will say is that America is a thing that doesn't exist that much around the world in other places where there's just a whole lot of people from all of these different kind of cultures and experiences together. And for one of those groups to kind of say, no, it's our heritage, in a way, to me, as as a person who, I mean, my grandfather's name is George Washington Erickson. Like, as a person, he's a staff sergeant in the Air Force who kind of grew up with a degree of like what I would consider like kind of proper and pragmatic like patriotism. I think the people who kind of, if there's a group that kind of stands up and says, well, no, this is our heritage and these other people are doing this or that or the other thing, like, that's not correct. And that's not patriotic to me. And that's not American. American is at least the tolerance and at best the acceptance of the fact that we're supposed to be all of these things.
In other words, it's possessive to say that, which is against American values, to sort of insist that because one is Anglo-Saxon or one is Germanic, that
Yeah.
that they are more essentially American than, say, someone who's Latino. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, yeah, there is no more American.
Though, granted, again, it's often not the issue of them being Latino; it's the issue of them. I mean, yeah. So if it's probably a bad example to say that, because often if someone has a gripe about that, it's more about the status of their immigration. But nonetheless, there is a chance that they might be against the
But
idea.
it's and I think it's kind of being unfairly foisted upon one group or another.
Right. But even that sentence I just said, that should not be like.
Like, everybody has their responsibilities, and I kind of view it as like, don't I almost kind of look at it as like, maybe maybe the best place we could get to is like, don't worry about those guys. Like, you worry about yourself. Like, you pay your bills, you take care of yourself, you take care of your family. Don't worry about what someone else is doing at the worst of it. Like, if you don't want to engage in a conversation about culture, then just be quiet and take care of yourself.
But that
And that's it.
doesn't.
Like, I think we should strive to do better, but I think, like, at the very, very worst, you know, just you do your thing, and you don't even worry about other people then.
Yeah.
Because then at least those other people, who are trying to get a little piece of that heritage, who are trying to get a little, who are trying to get a seat at the table, so to speak. Um, that's one less person, trying to kind of step in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my last question for you is, kind of tied to the one before. Um, how do you think people, and this is obviously just your opinion as an individual, based on how you're saying, like, because you've kind of made yourself more visible, you've sort of like taken a certain degree of responsibility for, having conversations, even if, they're not always the most comfortable for other people to hear.
And
Um,
note, in fact, on Friday I'll be taking part in an event for Transgender Day of Remembrance, which
mhm.
commemorates yeah it takes place in Asbury Park every year. This year it'll be online. And it commemorates lost lives who are transgender who have been slain. And I'm also taking part in the Deep in Color event that I did earlier this month. We're gonna do it again December 6th. Basically, it is a chat about race, and so yeah, I've been doing events with that. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, my question for you is, how do you think people who want to say and do the right things should be seeking guidance?
Well, they should be seeking if they are, and they should be seeking in themselves, if they're coming from good faith or bad faith, if they're coming from humility or arrogance, if they're coming from self dignity or desire for dissent. That's what they should be seeking. I don't know. It's kind of a big question. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah, yeah. But I appreciate your insights, Jillian, and I value them. And I'm glad that, you were able to take time out of your week to come talk with us and play some music for us and tell us about your life and your art.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you to Martin Houth and to Jim Lenskold and everybody at the Asbury Park Music Foundation, and to our producer, director, and man behind the camera, Matt Smith. This is the end of season 3. We'll see you next year. Everyone have a happy holiday, and be safe out there. I have been, and I remain Brian Erickson. We'll see you next time.
Love you, Brian. Love you, Martin.
All right, we're out.
Hey.